Hello and welcome to the Civil War News Station. Today we will be reporting on the major events that occurred during the Civil War. We have reporters ready to describe the causes of the war, the battles, and important people who contributed to the war. The Civil War started in 1861 and lasted until 1865. It's known as the War between the States because it was fought between the northern states and the southern Confederate states. Over 600,000 people died, so it's also the deadliest war in American history. Plus, what made this war particularly devastating is that brothers fought against brothers, and as a result, it devastated and divided our country. First, we hear from Jacqueline. Can you tell us some of the issues that caused the Civil War?
Have you ever wondered how the Civil War started? It was mostly because of slavery and keeping the countries united. There were disagreements between the north half of the United States and the south half to see if they were keeping the south and north together or splitting them apart. The Civil War was fought by the north and the south. The Confederate South didn't want to be a part of the United States, but the Union North wanted to stay one country. Another reason the North wanted to stay together was because they didn't want to go into war. The South was anxious that they would not be able to create their own laws. The biggest law they were concerned about was abolishing slavery because the South wanted to keep slavery. What did it mean to the South if they lost slavery? It meant that the plantation owners would have to do their own work, and they wouldn't have anyone doing it for them. Why was slavery important? It was important because the landowners needed the help. It meant that they wouldn't have any profits. The plantation owners depended on slavery to keep the crops and plantations healthy. Slavery wasn't a good thing for the slaves. The slave masters worked them very hard. The slaves never got a break. The slaves were badly punished and they were treated awful. These are some reasons the Civil War was fought.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Next we go to Olivia, who is reporting on the Underground Railroad. Olivia, tell us more about this remarkable underground network.
Hi, my name is Olivia, and I'll be talking about the Underground Railroad and why it is so important to learn about in school. The Underground Railroad was a place where slaves escaped the South and went to the North to get their freedom. The Underground Railroad wasn't underground, nor was it a railroad. There were many people that were famous that were slaves like Thomas Garrett, John Brown, William Still, etc. The people I just named were people who are abolitionists and who were freed from slavery by the Underground Railroad. There were also a lot of people who helped slaves escape slavery as well. Also, nobody really knew how it got its name, the Underground Railroad. Some people may have thought the Underground Railroad was organized, but in reality, it really wasn't organized at all. It was very difficult for the slaves to go to the North because they didn't know how to read any signs like road signs. Why they weren't able to read is because they never were taught how to read nor write. Slavery had lasted 250 years, and it also took a long time for a lot of people to believe that slavery was wrong. Slaves had to travel from station to station to station to get to the end of the Underground Railroad and escape the South. Conductors would help the slaves escape by offering their home, food, and clothes for them. It's amazing how strangers would help slaves meanwhile not even knowing them, and they would even risk their own lives for slaves that they don't even know. Now that's a good person. Slaves didn't exactly know how they could even go to the North Side or Canada and where to even go for shelter. It was very difficult for the slaves to decide if they wanted to go to the Underground Railroad because if you got caught, you possibly get killed, beaten, hung, and more. So how did they know which direction to go? By looking in the sky at night and seeing the stars to where it was leading to. They called the stars the Big Dipper. Some slaves used that way to escape and so others did a different way to escape. That's just one way I know how they did escape. That was some information about the Underground Railroad that I have learned about, and I sure hope you learned something new about the Underground Railroad as well. Maybe think about it if you were a slave and how you would use strategies on how to escape the Underground Railroad.
Yes. People risked their lives to help slaves become free. Thanks, Olivia. Next, we hear from Cece, who is reporting from the birthplace of Harriet Tubman, one of the most famous conductors in the Underground Railroad system.
As we know, Harriet Tubman played a big part of the Civil War by bringing slaves to freedom. Today I'm going to tell you some things you may or may not know about her. First, she was born in 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. Her birth name was Amaranta Ross. She took her mom's name, Harriet. Also, she lived in a one-room cabin with a family of 11 people. Next, she escaped the South in 1849. She was told that she would be sold the next day, so she escaped and went to a house of a Quaker woman, and she learned about the Underground Railroad. Soon she made it to the North and decided to become a conductor and help slaves escape. She and the slaves would escape on a Saturday, because on a Sunday it is a slave's day off. In the end, she helped 300 slaves escape. She took 5 to 7 people on the long journeys to the North. Also, from 1850 to 1860, she made 19 trips to the South to bring slaves to freedom. But that is not the end of Harriet Tubman. Well, not yet. She had more jobs than just being a conductor. She was a nurse and a spy. During the war, she helped soldiers that were sick, and when she was a spy, she would pretend to be a slave to get information from the enemy. Now, like all great leaders, their story comes to an end. Harriet spent her last years in a house in Irvine, New York. Soon she became ill with pneumonia and died on March 10, 1913. She was 93 years old when she died. But even though she is gone, her stories live on, and she will always be remembered as a great leader, person, and hero.
What an amazing, courageous woman. Thanks, Cece, for that informative report. One of the reasons this war was fought was because some of the southern states decided to secede from the Union. Tess, tell us more about this.
Hi, I am Tess, and I am reporting on the Confederate States seceding from the United States of America. Now, have you ever wondered how all these states seceded? Well, here is how. First, this all started back in February 1861 when slavery was going on. The southern states were slave states and the north states were free states. So the southern states started to secede, which means to leave. South Carolina was the first state to secede, and when South Carolina started to secede, many other states did as well. And the reason why the southern part is seceding is because they wanted to form their own government and make their own laws. But the North didn't like that. Plus, Abraham Lincoln was super shocked this was happening, and many others were too. When the southern states were seceding, they didn't want the North to make slavery illegal, so they needed help when they were seceding. That's when Robert E. Lee came in and helped. Robert was going to fight for the North because he didn't like slavery and he wanted the slaves to be free, but Robert's family, friends, and relatives were all on the South side. And Robert didn't want to fight his family and friends, so he fought with the South. This started the Civil War. When the war was happening, the South wanted the war to be really quick. The North had many advantages over the South in the war. One of the advantages was they had more men to fight in the war. Second, they had 4 times the population. Last, they had more plantations than the South. So when the South saw they had more people and they didn't want any more people to die, so they gave up. That meant the North won the war.
Thanks, Tess, for that great reporting. Next, we go to South Carolina, to the Charleston Bay area. Julian, what important battle was fought there?
Hi, my name is Julian, and I'm going to tell you about the attack on Fort Sumter. Have you ever wondered what battle started the Civil War? Well, I'm going to tell you about the attack on Fort Sumter, the first battle of the Civil War. The Battle of Fort Sumter took place over 2 days, April 12th to April 13th, 1861. And this battle was the start of the Civil War. Fort Sumter is off the coast of South Carolina in Charleston Bay Harbor. Fort Sumter was in South Carolina, so the Confederate troops wanted it as their territory. The Confederate troops took the first shot. Fort Sumter fired back because they still wanted their land, so they would have a fort in the South. None of the Union soldiers died, but some got injured. Major Robert Anderson was the Northern general for Fort Sumter. He told Lincoln that they would need food or supplies, or they would have to surrender to the Confederate troops. Lincoln told President Jefferson that they were going to only send food and supplies, no guns, ammunition, or fresh soldiers. Jefferson still told his troops to fire on the ships. Major Robert Anderson surrendered to the Confederate troops because it was getting too intense for the Union soldiers. And that was the first battle of the Civil War.
Thanks, Julian. Abraham Lincoln was the president during the Civil War. Tyler, tell us more about this president.
Do you want to know what Abraham Lincoln did during the Civil War? Abraham Lincoln supported his troops, and that made him a very excellent leader. He was known for his honesty. He wanted to abolish slavery and free all the slaves. He wanted to unite the country and didn't want the South to leave the Union. All these things made Abraham Lincoln an excellent leader during the Civil War. How did Abraham Lincoln lead the country during the Civil War? Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. 1 month before the war started, the South did not want Abraham Lincoln to be elected president. The South decided to leave the Union, but Abraham Lincoln wanted to keep the country united. Abraham Lincoln gathered an army together. Abraham Lincoln led the army go to war, and the North won the war. It was one of the bloodiest wars in history. Abraham Lincoln had faced threats and challenges, but thankfully Abraham Lincoln kept the country together and ended slavery. After the war ended, 6 days later, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. He wanted to help the country recover and rebuild, but he died before he had the chance to do this. This is why Abraham Lincoln was an excellent leader during the Civil War.
The Emancipation Proclamation was a document that changed the landscape of the war. Miranda, what do you have to tell us about the Emancipation Proclamation?
I am Miranda, and I'm talking about the Emancipation Proclamation. Do you know what proclamation freed the slaves? Listen to this to find out. There was a civil war going on, and some people wanted to end slavery, and some people did not. During the war, Lincoln wanted to stop it and free the slaves, so he came up with the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln did not want slavery, but he did not say that it was the reason for the war is to destroy it. Because Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware are border states, and Lincoln wanted them to stay in the Union. If they knew the war was to end slavery, they would go straight to the Confederacy. That means the population, land, and resources would go to the Confederacy too. Keeping Kentucky and Maryland on the Union side is important because Lincoln said, "I think to lose to Kentucky is nearly the same thing as to lose the whole game." Lincoln had another reason for the war, saving the Union. He thought it was worth a war, but not everyone thought ending slavery was worth a war. It's one thing not wanting slavery, and it's another going to war about it. The abolitionists thought that is what the war should be about. Lincoln knew he must wait for more Northerners to agree or he will lose support for the war. The summer of 1862, Lincoln thought that slavery must die and the nation might live. He stays up late writing the document called the Emancipation Proclamation, Forever Free. It was completed in July 1862. William Shrewd thought if they announce it now, it will look like a desperate escape at the hands of the Confederacy. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves and the North won the war. And I think that is one of the best proclamations and one of the most helpful that is the Emancipation Proclamation.
Thank you, Miranda. And now to Julia with our human interest story about a famous woman who made an incredible contribution to the war effort.
Have you ever heard of the Red Cross? Do you know who founded the Red Cross organization? I will answer both of these questions and many more. Clara Barton founded the Red Cross in America, but the Red Cross originated in Switzerland and started in France. Clara was born in North Oxford, Massachusetts on December 25th, 1821. Clara had 4 siblings and they had a big impact in her life. When her brother fell off their barn and got severely injured to the point where doctors thought he would not make it, with Clara's help he got better. This is when she found out she liked helping people. At the time the Civil War was happening, Clara lived in Washington, and she wanted to help. She helped get supplies like food, bandages, and anything else that might help. As the war went on, she decided that this was not enough. She wanted to help at the front lines. Clara soon got a wagon full of supplies and went to the field hospital. When she arrived at a field hospital, it was almost out of supplies. Although the commanders did not allow her to go to the front lines, she begged the commanders, and finally the commanders allowed her to go. She helped soldiers from both sides to get help at the field hospitals. She also helped to make sure that fewer people were dying of infection and disease. Clara went from field hospital to field hospital for many different battles to help hurt soldiers. After the Civil War, Clara helped soldiers find their families. She also helped in the American-Mexican War. Clara had a very big impact on the Civil War. She died 47 years after the Civil War on April 12, 1912, in Glen Echo, Maryland. Now for sure you know what the Red Cross is and who brought the Red Cross to America.
I would like to personally thank all our news reporters for a job well done, and a special thanks to Mr. Kuntzman for his contributions to make this news program possible. And that's today's Civil War News Report. Thank you and goodbye.
Wait, would there be a glare from my glasses?
I'm talking about the causes of the Civil War. Can we do it after?
Well, no, I think Mr. Kuntzman.
So I'm Miranda, and I'm talking about the Emancipation Proclamation.
Her birth name was... I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
You messed me up! I didn't mean to! Yes, you did! Be quiet! No!
Wagon full of supplies to take to the soldiers.
Hi, my name's Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, shoot. Oh, I was doing really well, too.
Yeah.